Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
10 minutes before 8 is the time. We will return to our conversation concerning travel in just a moment. But in other stories, and it makes you proud to be British, 9 million vaccines to be donated bilaterally and offered to COVAX to help tackle the spread of COVID overseas. Details now from Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, who joins me. Can we name some of the countries and what lies behind this, Foreign Secretary? Good morning to you.
Good morning. Yes, look, we know that we've made great strides vaccinating 70%, double vaccinating the UK population. I think we also recognise we're not going to be safe in this pandemic until everyone's safe, and that means trying to shore up those countries, poorer, more vulnerable countries around the world, which are suffering. So we're doing this. We're leading the way internationally. 100 million doses from the excess, the surplus of our domestic rollout. We're encouraging other countries. We've got an extra billion doses from other countries. That's the leadership we're showing. And they will go to countries like Laos and Cambodia, to countries at risk. Indonesia suffering a lot with the pandemic at the moment, so quite a lot of Indo-Pacific countries where we're partnering with, but have got great need. But also the wider Commonwealth, from Kenya to Jamaica, Belize. So I think this demonstrates Global Britain as a life-saving force for good in the world. And let's remember, we're not just doing this out of some sort of sense of altruism. We know we will be safer in this country if we shore up internationally those countries that are at risk either of further waves or whom we do business with or trade with or where people go on holiday.
All right. Staying on an international footing, we hear that fortunately travel might be reinstated, but there still seems to be an issue with France. Why would that be, Foreign Secretary?
Well, we look at the data very carefully. There's been an issue with the beta variant, but the truth is this is for the medical and scientific experts, the so-called Joint Biosecurity Centre to look at, along with PHE and the other data we get. And they will take a look at all of those traffic light rankings, if you like, for countries next week. So there'll be a review towards the end of next week, and they'll be able to assess that very carefully.
I don't need to tell you that France is a very popular holiday destination or travel destinations, around 12 million visits a year from Britain. The data in France, as you're probably aware regarding beta, is based on figures from the Reunion Island, which you'll know where that is. It's in the Indian Ocean. Why are we allowing the figures from France to come from somewhere 6,000 miles away from the mainland? Why do we look at those figures? They're nonsensical.
We look at it in the round, but of course, if you've got free movement, which of course they do within any individual country between those areas, the risk is, and the whole point of the way the JBC looks at this is to stay ahead of the curve. The risk is that if you see big spikes in one or other area, even if it's further away from the main urban hubs or the rest of the country, the risk is that it spreads. So it was that's the evidence base. But I don't look, I'm not in charge of the scientific evidence. We take that from the JBC. We've got it. It's provided to us. And of course, you're right in terms of saying that the data shifts. That's why they'll look at it again next week. No one wants to get France onto amber or even the green list more than I do, but I think it's right to take the evidence from the experts about the variants and the risks that they pose.
So hand on heart, you think that they might move from amber plus next week? France, that is?
Hand on heart, I don't make predictions for what the JBC will recommend, but all I do say is, look, as Foreign Secretary, as someone who wants to go on holiday, someone who's got lots of businesses in my constituency that want to travel for commercial purposes, we want to get out of the travel restrictions as soon as possible, but we've got to be able to do it on a safe and secure basis.
I had the privilege of speaking with the Prime Minister a couple of nights ago, and we touched on the subject of the Royal Yacht, of course, the return of, if you will, of the Royal Yacht, this project. He's a huge fan. What do you think it would bring to Great Britain? It's a lot of money, isn't it?
Look, I think with all of these things, you've got to look at both the, if you like, the soft power prestige that it provides, and I think we should fly the flag in this country. You and I have talked about this before. We need to be self-confident. Global Britain is all about that. We ought to be flying the flag, whether it's the diplomatic representation we have, or when we're doing this life-saving work with vaccines, we should be proud of what we're doing. Also, we look, of course, you're right, at the cost basis, the value added, and we combine both of those things, if you like, the strategic value added and then the cost of these things. That's the conversation that we have in government.
I mean, the cost has gone up, it is reported this morning. Have you seen the figure that it's at now, Foreign Secretary?
I'm not directly responsible for it, but I'm not surprised that it's a significant expenditure.
Yeah, it's 200. It is reported it could have risen to £250 million. Would you say that's money well spent?
I think, as I said, you've got to look very carefully at what we get for bang for our buck.
No, I did hear that, Foreign Secretary. It's just, do you think that would be money well spent? £250 for a new Royal yacht?
I think it's easy to underestimate the work that the Royals do, the way that they, if you like, the soft power that they yield on our behalf. And I think we consistently underestimate what they do. I was at, we've got this Global Education Summit that we're hosting with the Kenyans over the next 2 days. The Princess Royal was there last night.
I obviously phrased the question badly. My question wasn't about the value of the royal family, because I'm absolutely on the same page with you there, Foreign Secretary. My question was, is it worth £250 million for a new royal yacht?
And look, I think the investment is worth it if we can make sure that it is expanding our influence and our reach overseas, creating jobs for the UK, extending our soft power, being a force for good in the world. All of those things come together, and a yacht can really boost our ability to do all of those things. So I appreciate it's a significant outlay, but you've got to look at all of the things over the long term of its use that we'll get back.
OK. You talked about the life, when you started our conversation, you talked about the life-saving work that COVAX is doing. There's a bit of a row going on about the life-saving that's being offered by the RNLI in the English Channel at the moment. Some people saying that the lifeboat charity was not set up to act as effectively a taxi service, and in a way it's almost encouraging these souls to make this perilous journey. Where are you on that, Foreign Secretary?
Look, the RNLI do an incredible job. They've got this great heart and soul to them, and they do an amazing job. I think they operate obviously within the legal rules, and I think that's part of this country. We're a big-hearted country. At the same time, if you're talking about the wider small boats issue, that is something where we absolutely, at the same time, need to come down as hard as is humanly possible, working with our French partners. It was first on the item of my agenda with my French opposite number when I was in Paris on Monday, to do various things. See the threat of the criminal gangs trying to launch from France to the UK as early as possible. That's partly intelligence, it's partly technology. And secondly, have the strongest criminal action, including prosecution and sentences, against those criminal elements that feed like parasites off the human misery of those people making that journey. And I don't think that's inconsistent, that robust approach, with recognising what the RNLI do. OK, a couple of last points, staying with matters overseas. There is a suggestion that as regards the people who helped the British military in Afghanistan, some people have been brought home, but roughly there are around possibly 130 interpreters who've not been brought back to the United Kingdom despite helping the British military. Why have we rescued some but not all, Foreign Secretary? Look, we recognise the heroism, the value added, the loyalty showed by so many of those people in Afghanistan in support of the mission of our armed forces and our diplomatic work and our aid work there.
So why don't we bring them back to safety in the UK?
Well, 2,200 have been brought back.
Which is tremendous.
And I think, which is tremendous.
Yes,
and
indeed.
Of course, we've got checks in place to make sure that the offer we're making, that, again, we come back to this in connection with my earlier answer, that big-hearted offer that we rightly make to repay the loyalty is taken up by those who are eligible for it because they've shown that loyalty, shown that service towards us. So there are inevitably some checks to make sure that the offer is taken up by those who are eligible.
Right. But the Prime Minister has been in receipt of a letter from 40 senior military personnel saying that Britain faces, quotes, dishonour if these translators aren't brought home. Why is it such a difficult case? I don't understand.
Well, we would be having a different conversation, Nick, if we were allowing people to avail themselves of this scheme without at least conducting some checks to make sure that they're eligible, to make sure that they've not been engaged in any particular other activity which would cut across us wanting to reach out and show them that safe haven. And I think that's natural. Can you imagine the questions you'd be asking me if we just said that without any checks at all, we'd let anyone that applied come in? So I think if you look at it, you said there was something like 100 cases that have not been...
130 interpreters have had their cases rejected.
130, but 2,200 have. I think actually that shows that we are trying to make it work as effectively as possible, and that's only right.
Always enjoy our time together. Thank you very much indeed, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, appearing here on LBC, where the time is 8 o'clock. News is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab says there is the right level of security and assurance for a major relaxation of travel restrictions. From Monday, fully vaccinated people from the US and much of the EU will not have to quarantine on arrival in Britain. Labour is concerned about the risk of importing new variants of coronavirus. Professor Lawrence Young, a virologist, says we need to remain cautious.
I think double jabs, great, letting people in who have been double vaccinated, but we do need to make sure people are also being tested. We've seen new data recently from the States, from CDC, showing that if you're infected, you can still spread the virus. It confirms that we haven't got the levels of population immunity at the level we want